Welcome back to DK Sports Radio. You're listening to The Steelers Show. I'm Chris Carter here with Dale Lolley talking all things Steelers. And as always, our Steelers coverage here on DKPittsburghSports.com is brought to you by Henny Jewelers. Henny Jewelers, your jewelers on Walnut Street in Shadyside. Henny Jewelers, your jewelers for life. Now, Dale, as always, we talk things Steelers, but we're going to switch it up. We've been getting a lot of news going on, but let's talk about something a little bit more fun for fans, and that's going to be the Steelers standing in fantasy football.
Yeah,
now,
baby, we're getting close to a lot of people do their drafts right after the mini camps. You get those season-long drafts coming up, those kind of things. You have the rookie drafts for the leagues that are, the dynasty leagues. Right. So there's some guys there to look at as well. So always good to look at some fantasy football stuff.
It's always interesting. And it was also kind of funny is that about a few years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the Steelers weren't exactly a team that stood out in fantasy football because they didn't have the stars. You had your Mike Wallaces, and you had, Ben Roethlisberger was your second backup quarterback. But now the Steelers have some serious weapons that people are gunning for, especially in the names of Bell and Brown.
Yeah, let's talk quarterback first because that's where everybody likes to start.
Right.
And though, my thing that I've always tried to do in my fantasy leagues is, unless I'm getting Aaron Rodgers or even maybe Tom Brady early on,
right,
I'm not drafting my quarterback until I get to, rounds 5 or 6, maybe even 7. I want to load up at the other positions first. But I'll tell you what, if I'm looking at the quarterback position, especially with what I think the Steelers are going to want to do this year with Ben Roethlisberger, a lot more no huddle. Mm-hmm. I think they want to run with more pace, speed things up a little bit. I look at Ben Roethlisberger and I say, okay, I think, you can write him down for 4,500 yards. I think 30 to 35 touchdowns are in order. Mm. And if he can put those kind of numbers up, he's most certainly a number one starting fantasy quarterback, as he has been the last few years. But he's also he's in the running to be one of the top scorers in the league.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part is because I've always been a believer that unless I'm getting the Aaron Rodgers, or back in the day when Peyton Manning was lighting up all sorts of.
You want somebody who's going to get you that 35, 40 touchdown passes to go along with 45 to 5,000 yards.
Right, and when you have that guy, it puts your offense over, and you can get almost 30 points a week from that guy. It saves your team. I was doing that when Deshaun Watson was healthy, but that kind of went away. We broke that on this show, actually.
Yeah, and you know what? The thing about Roethlisberger at this point in his career is he's not going to get you the hidden yards that a Deshaun Watson or a Russell Wilson is going to get you, the rushing yards. Mm-hmm. Aaron Rodgers can still give you that, in addition to being a very good quarterback as well. He's going to run for 300 yards throughout the season and probably 3 or 4 touchdown passes. But Roethlisberger's still really solid, and if you're looking at that, maybe not the upper tier of fantasy quarterbacks, but he's right there with the Drew Breeses, as I mentioned, the Russell Wilsons.
I think also a factor that people forget about Ben Roethlisberger is how much he loves just kicking it to Bell for those quick passes underneath, or not even the quick passes, when he just releases on like a third down and he's under the coverage. That's like 10, 15 yards sometimes, and sometimes even touchdowns. Those are plays that are easy for this all-pro quarterback to be able to make those type of plays. And when those are points that sort of come into you that don't come to a lot of teams that don't have running backs like Russell Wilson, who can't really check it down to anybody because they don't have a running back.
He was their leading passer and rusher last year.
Almost their receiver, too.
Speaking of running backs, you mentioned Le'Veon Bell.
Yes. Where do you rank him?
He's not quite the fantasy threat that he would be on other teams because of the touchdowns.
Right.
The lack of touchdowns kind of holds him back. But you look at the David Johnsons. I think he's right there.
Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley's. There's some other guys there. Ezekiel Elliott doesn't have the suspension hanging over him like he did last year. He's most certainly a first-round draft pick, though.
Yes.
And I think you're looking at Le'Veon Bell this year as maybe that second or third running back taken. I don't know what order you put those guys in right now. Maybe I put Gurley first, but that tends to change from year to year with that top running backs.
I mean, Gurley had an explosive year, especially in receiving
and caught the ball
yards.
well, yeah.
He caught the ball. But a lot of those catches were screens because the Rams kept catching people off guard. And now the Rams, they've made a lot of additions to both sides.
They've actually went out and got some receivers.
Right. So now I'm going to wonder, does Gurley still get those targets that really helped to boost up his stats last year? But I also agree with you on the fact that it's very rare unless you're the supreme of supreme running backs. You don't lead the NFL every year. I mean, Kareem Hunt just came in out of nowhere and just blew it up.
You gonna take him in the first round?
I don't think I could take him in the first round this year when I could take a Bell, an Elliott, a Johnson. I'll tell you what, another guy that people might be sleeping on, Alvin Kamara, with Ingram out for 4 weeks. Kamara this is his chance to show, hey, I'm a full-time starting. I can do this on my own. The Saints will want to work Ingram back in when he comes back, but if Kamara's getting them $100 yards a week, and is still being that receiving threat, I think that they might stick with him as the primary option.
Yeah, especially in PPR leagues, he could be very valuable.
We'll be right back onto the Steelers Show after these messages.
Miller Lite is the original light beer, and we'll always brew it to have more taste, with only 96 calories and 3.2 carbs. Because we believe that if you compromise on taste, you can taste the compromise. Miller Lite. Hold true.
Great beer, great responsibility. 2018 Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Average analysis, 12 fluid ounces. Less than 1 gram protein, 0 grams fat.
If you're one of the thousands of Western Pennsylvanians who love to get outdoors, then you need to check out this cool new website, stepoutside.org. Learn where, when, and how you can go camping, hiking, or hunting. Or take part in power sports, shooting sports, or water sports in your local community or across the country at stepoutside.org, where everything you need to know is just a click away. That's stepoutside.org.
What I want from my public accounting firm is big ideas.
But I don't want to lose the personal attention.
My company needs global capabilities.
From a firm with local ownership.
And I want to work with industry experts.
Who take the time to understand my unique challenges. And that's what sets Schneider Downs apart. Expertise for the most complex business issues. With the service you need every day. To learn how our big thinking with a personal focus can help your company, visit schneiderdowns.com.
Injured in an accident? Need assistance in preserving your business's interests? Let the attorneys at Bassey, Vreeland & Associates protect your legal rights. For over 65 years, Bassey, Vreeland & Associates has been representing the citizens and businesses of southwestern Pennsylvania. With offices strategically located in Washington and Charleroi, Bassey, Vreeland & Associates can deliver results for you throughout the Pittsburgh area. Visit www.bmvlaw.com or call 724-228-7000 to see how Bassey, Vreeland & Associates can meet your legal needs. Bassey, Vreeland & Associates. We fight, we care, we win.
Welcome back to DK Sports Radio. You're listening to The Steelers Show. I'm Chris Carter here with Dale Lolley. We're talking fantasy football today, ladies and gentlemen. But before we get back into the fantasy football talk, we got to thank our friends over at mybookie.ag. MyBookie.ag, your number one online sports betting resource. Go there, desktop, laptop, mobile, on your phone, whatever. They're good with it, and be sure to use that promo code DK Radio. That's DK Radio to get a 50% bonus on your deposit. MyBookie.ag, you play, you win, you get paid. Now let's talk more about how fans can get paid in fantasy football this year. We talked about the running back position, and I think it's going to be an interesting time this year because we talked about how the running back market's about to change as far as how much they get paid with Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, and I think even the Kareem Hunts and the Leonard Fournettes when their contracts come up after the rookie years. So I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic. But let's switch to the receiver position, and not just who to pick at receiver, but when do you pick receiver, Dale? Because a lot of people say with the situation of running backs in the NFL, running back has to be your first pick. But there's some superstar wide receivers producing, and Antonio Brown's one of them. Would you pick, if you had first overall pick, would you pick the top running back on your personal board, or would you pick the top receiver?
Well, it depends on how many points you get for receptions. If it's a full point, I would certainly consider drafting Antonio Brown, number one overall. Think about what he did last year. 13 games, had 101 catches. Still led the league. I believe he still led the league in total yards, receiving, and was in the running at the time of his injury. He was in the running to do the Triple Crown.
Yeah,
receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. He is certainly a guy that you look at and say, okay, if I'm going to take a receiver, it might be him first overall. I would certainly take him in the first 5 picks.
Yeah, I mean, if you pass on him after the first 5, you're kind of crazy. I understand some people they really love their running backs, and personally, I'm a running back guy. If I have first overall pick Le'Veon Bell or Ezekiel Elliott, those
it's got to be a guy that catches the ball.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not getting Kareem Hunt, who's just going to run the ball.
He still leaves the field on third downs.
Exactly.
They put Charkandrick West on the field because Kareem Hunt can't block.
Right, and as Vince Williams showed in those games. But if you have speaking also, that's the one thing I think that's the biggest factor when we're talking about running backs is who are those receiving threats. And lately, that it's been Ezekiel Elliott, that's been Le'Veon Bell. David Johnson would have been that last year if he wasn't hurt,
and he will be back this year.
And he'll be back. Dale, do you think David Johnson should get the look because he's coming off this injury and he feels like he has something to prove?
Well, it's a contract year for David Johnson, much like it is for Le'Veon Bell. But the problem that I have with David Johnson is the team that he plays on.
Okay.
I don't think the Cardinals are going to be very good this year. Now, that could lead to a few more catches for him.
Right.
But, if Sam Bradford gets hurt, which we can expect that to happen, then all of a sudden David Johnson's value plummets a little bit. So I have him rated behind maybe Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley. The other interesting thing that you have to look at with the Steelers is where do you draft Juju?
Yeah, well, see, that's been an interesting topic because Bryant was that guy that people asked, when do you draft him because of his explosive ability, but the inconsistency of producing. Juju produced pretty consistently once he caught on last year, and now there's the mix-in of James Washington. How does he factor into the offense? I'd say Juju right now. I'd put him as it depends on how many people you have in your league. I usually do 12 to 16-ish. But if we're talking like those types of leagues, he might go in the 4th, 5th round or so.
I think I would rank him somewhere in the receivers 15 to 20 range.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, as you said, that 3rd, 4th, 5th round, somewhere in those middle rounds. And then you start looking at Washington. I think you take a flyer on him. Maybe a little bit later. He's not going to put up Juju Smith-Schuster numbers.
No, he's not. Yeah,
but I think he can put up some decent numbers as maybe a 5th receiver on your roster, a guy who starts on bye weeks and those kind of things. So maybe you're looking at him later on in the draft, the 8th, 9th round, somewhere in there. And you also have the sleeper, Vance McDonald.
Yeah, I think Vance McDonald is a very good point. I think he's going to become a more favorite target for Ben Roethlisberger this year. And now that he's been in the system, he's going to know a little bit more about it. He'll get those targets. The red zone targets, I think, will be big. And he can run after the catch. That's such a big factor for tight ends that doesn't often get considered. But here's the thing. Where do you pick Vance McDonald?
I would almost,
I don't pick tight ends until late in the draft, unless Rob Gronkowski is floated into the 2nd round somehow.
There's some guys there that you would look at. Gronkowski's one, but you always have to deal with the injury issues.
Right.
You look at Jimmy Graham is another guy. There's some good young tight ends out there, some good guys who have also established themselves a little bit. If you don't get one of those guys, I wouldn't have a problem having Vance McDonald as my starter as long as I get another guy who's capable of being stepping in if it doesn't work out. You always have to worry about those kind of guys who haven't done it yet in a certain situation. But I think Vance McDonald's going to have 50 catches this year, somewhere in that range.
That could be interesting, and that's an interesting prospect to add to the team. Last but not least, where do you draft the Steelers defense?
I think, you look at the sacks last year, 56 led the league.
They produced there.
They did produce. I think that they're going to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of how they're putting an emphasis on taking the ball away again. So I think, if they can get the takeaways, if they can get the sacks, I think you're looking again at the top 5 fantasy defense.
That would change the game, and people always debate when you take the defenses. I always take them last, but I think it'd be very interesting if you can sneak in and get that Steelers defense. I think a lot of people are going to be sleeping on them because of the reputation that people have seen. The high score against the Jaguars. Tom Brady's success against the defense. But when you look at those raw numbers from last year, there's some encouragement, especially with the secondary coming of age in Artie Burns and Sean Davis, Mike Hilton, and now you're going to get Joe Hayden and Morgan Burnett. This could be a breakout year for that defense. But that was Fantasy Sports here on the Steelers Show here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. Dale, always good having you, buddy.
Absolutely.
And we'll be back in your feed soon talking some more Steelers talk, but stay tuned here on DK Sports Radio. We got Pirates. We got a lot of great content going on for you this summer.